Upon accidentally discovering that my parents had left the entire inheritance to my sister, I stopped paying their bills. A month later, my mom called. "Honey, the utility bill came." I replied, just as no one expected. Before we continue, please write down the country you are watching the video from. Enjoy listening. Xenia, as usual, stood by the kitchen table, absent-mindedly looking at the numbers on her laptop screen. Paying the bills for her parents' apartment was a routine task she had done every month for many years. Electricity, gas, water, internet. Without her, Oleg and Victor seemed unable to cope. She sighed, not that it was hard, but sometimes she felt like a workhorse pulling the whole family along. Her younger sister Alice was probably choosing a new outfit for a party or discussing the latest gossip with friends. Alice lived in a different world, a world of carefree living where bills paid themselves and problems resolved magically. Xenia didn't envy her, but sometimes she wished for a bit more appreciation. Olga, her mother, often told Alice, "You need more freedom, you're a creative person, and you, Xenia, are practical, you always find a way." Xenia always found a way. She worked as an accountant, managed the household, and still found time to help her parents. Alice, on the other hand, created, as Olga put it, switching from one hobby to another, from photography courses to dance lessons, all paid for from the family budget, which Xenia mostly replenished. One day after work and chores, Xenia decided to visit her parents. She bought their favorite cake, Praga, and a bottle of good wine. She just wanted to sit with them, chat, and feel like part of the family, not just a resource provider. When she entered the apartment, Olga was bustling in the kitchen, and Victor, her father, was sitting in his armchair, engrossed in the sports channel as always. "Xenia, dear, come in," Olga greeted her joyfully. "It's so good to see you." "Yes, honey, you're a bit late today. Work, Dad?" Xenia replied. The evening went as usual. They drank tea with cake, discussed the news, and Victor grumbled about politicians while Olga talked about the neighbors. Alice, as always, was absent. She must be busy, Xenia thought with a slight pang of resentment. After tea, Xenia offered to help her mother with cleaning. Olga agreed, and they started sorting old things in the closet. Xenia didn't like this task. The closet was always dusty and cramped, but Olga stubbornly refused to throw away precious memories. It was there, among old photographs, yellowed letters, and other relics, that Xenia found it, a small envelope labeled Will. Curiosity got the better of her. She knew reading other people's letters was wrong, but the envelope seemed to beckon her, promising to reveal some secret. Xenia quickly opened the envelope and unfolded the document. Her heart raced as she began to read. With each line, she felt a growing sense of horror. The will clearly stated that all of Olga and Victor's property, including the apartment, bank accounts, and dacha, would go solely to Alice. A wave of anger, disappointment, and resentment washed over her. How could they do this to her, the one who had always been there, always helped, always put their needs first? She folded the will back into the envelope and hid it in her pocket. Olga returned to the closet. "What did you find, Xenia?" she asked, peeking into the box. "Nothing special, Mom," Xenia replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Just old photos." She spent the rest of the evening in a daze, trying to smile and keep the conversation going, but inside she was boiling. She felt betrayed, deceived, and utterly alone. When it was time to leave, Olga hugged her goodbye. "Thank you, dear, for coming. It's always so nice with you," Olga said. Xenia nodded silently. She couldn't say a word, afraid her emotions would spill out. At that moment, she made a decision. No more bills, no more medicine, no more help around the house. Let Alice, the chosen one and heir, take care of her parents now. At home, she called Marina, her best friend. "Marina, I need to talk to you," she said, struggling to hold back tears. "Everything is very bad." "What happened, Kshusha?" Marina asked worriedly. "Is it your parents?" "My parents are fine," Xenia replied. "But I'm not okay. I need you to listen to me." Marina arrived half an hour later. Xenia told her everything, not hiding a single detail. Marina listened silently, occasionally hugging her friend. Kshusha, I don't know what to say, Marina said when Ksenia finished her story. This is awful, just awful. I know, Ksenia replied. I just don't understand how they could do this. They made a mistake, Kshusha, Marina said. But that doesn't mean you have to suffer because of it. You have the right to your own life, to your own happiness. I know, Ksenia repeated, and I've decided I won't be silent anymore. I won't sacrifice myself for those who don't appreciate it. That's right, Kshusha, Marina supported her. Thank you, Marina, Ksenia said. You always support me. How could I not? Marina replied. We're friends. Ksenia knew a difficult period lay ahead. The first step toward this new life was deciding not to pay for her parents anymore. Initially, Olga and Victor's home was filled with a deceptive calm, as if nothing had changed. The routine continued, the medicine was still in stock, and the familiar rhythm of life was not disrupted. Victor grumbled at the morning show as usual, Olga bustled about the house, and the TV murmured news. They didn't even notice Ksenia's absence at first. Olga attributed Ksenia's absence to busyness. She must be busy at work, a lot of tasks, she said, trying to hide her concern. Victor, for his part, waved it off. She'll come around when she needs to, he muttered, buried in his newspaper. However, days turned into weeks, and Ksenia still didn't appear. There were no calls, no visits, not even a short message. Olga began to worry in earnest. She called Ksenia several times, but she didn't answer. Then she called Marina, Ksenia's best friend, hoping to find out something. Marina, hello. This is Olga, Ksenia's mother. How are you? She began in a sickly sweet voice. Hello, Olga Ivanovna, Marina replied restrainedly. We're fine. And you? Well, I'm worried about Kshusha. She's completely disappeared. Doesn't call, doesn't visit. Have you seen her? We've seen each other, of course. Kshusha is busy. She has a lot going on, Marina replied. But what happened? Why isn't she talking to us? Did we offend her somehow? You'd better ask her yourself, Olga Ivanovna. I can't reveal other people's secrets. Olga felt annoyed by Marina's evasiveness. Come on, at least give me a hint. I'm her mother, after all. She needs time and space. She'll tell you everything herself when she's ready. But for now, I'm sorry. I have to go. Goodbye. Marina hung up, leaving Olga in complete bewilderment. She shared her conversation with Victor, and he just grunted in annoyance. What a friend, parroting time and space. What nonsense. But deep down, Victor also began to feel worried. Ksenia's absence and the usual confidence in her unquestioning support began to fade. The first alarm bell rang when the mailbox received utility bills. Olga habitually took them out, intending to set them aside until Ksenia's visit, but then it dawned on her. Now they had to deal with these papers themselves. She tried but quickly got confused and called the management company. They demanded the account number, which she, of course, didn't know. Where do I find it? She asked desperately. Eventually, she hung up in despair. Vitya, what do we do? I don't understand any of this, she pleaded. Victor frowned and took the bills in his hands. He studied the fragments of information, trying to piece them together. He was used to Ksenia handling everything, sparing him the extra hassle. All right, we'll figure it out, he grumbled, though he wasn't sure of his own abilities. They spent the whole day trying to understand how to pay the utility bills. In the end, they managed to pay, but it cost them enormous effort and nerves. That evening, as they sat exhausted in front of the TV, they realized for the first time how much they depended on Ksenia. They understood that she didn't just help them, she practically ensured their existence. And now that her support was gone, they felt helpless. Olga couldn't stand it anymore and called Ksenia again. This time, her daughter answered. Honey, what happened? Why don't you call or visit? Olga asked worriedly. What happened? Don't you have Alice? She's your heir now. Let her take care of you, Ksenia replied coldly. Olga fell silent, shocked by her daughter's words. For the first time, she heard so much resentment and bitterness in Ksenia's voice. But Kshusha, we're your parents. How can you say that? How could you do this to me? All my life I supported you, and you chose to give everything to someone who doesn't even remember you. We, we just wanted her to have a future, Olga stammered, feeling a lump in her throat. And I don't have a future? Am I supposed to work for you and Alice all my life? No, of course not. We didn't think. Exactly, you never thought about me, Ksenia cut her off. Now live as you please. I won't finance you anymore. She hung up, leaving Olga in tears. Olga turned to Victor and told him about the conversation with their daughter. Victor was silent, his head bowed. He felt guilty and confused, realizing they had made a huge mistake by favoring Alice. But how could they fix it now? A month passed. Xenia tried not to think about her parents, immersing herself in work and pottery classes. The potter's wheel became a way for her to control her boiling emotions. She molded vases, cups, and small figurines, pouring her restrained anger, resentment, and, strangely enough, hope into them. Meanwhile, a different atmosphere reigned in Olga and Victor's apartment. Soon, financial problems were compounded by health issues. Victor ran out of blood pressure medication and felt unwell. We need to call Alice, Olga said resignedly. Maybe she can help. Alice, as always, was busy. She was preparing for a party with friends, and her parents' call annoyed her. Mom, what is it now? She asked irritably. Olga, trying not to show panic, said, Maybe you can help us a little? Alice sighed. Mom, I told you I'm having a tough time at work. Lots of tasks. And besides, I'm not Kshusha to solve all your problems. Try to figure it out yourselves. Without waiting for a response, Alice hung up. Olga, her hands dropping, looked at Victor. In his eyes, she saw the reflection of her own fear and disappointment. What do we do now? She whispered. Victor was silent. He felt helpless and guilty. Alice, putting down the phone, felt a pang of guilt. She knew her parents needed help, but she didn't want to cancel her plans. The party, new acquaintances, the opportunity to post beautiful photos on Instagram, all of it seemed more important than someone else's health problems. Kshusha, hi, she said, trying to sound as friendly as possible. Listen, our parents need help. Maybe you'll reconsider and help them? Xenia, hearing her sister's voice, felt a surge of anger. Alice, you know very well why I stopped helping our parents. You want me to take responsibility for something you don't want to deal with. You're the heir now. You take care of them. Alice tried to object, but Xenia cut her off. Don't call me anymore. I don't have time for empty talk. And she hung up. Alice, feeling humiliated and offended, threw the phone on the couch. How dare she? She hissed. How could she do this to our parents? She's just jealous of me, jealous of my beauty, my success, my carefree life. Otherwise, how can you explain her cruelty and indifference? The parents tried to talk to Xenia, but she kept her distance. Olga called several times, trying to start a conversation, but Xenia responded evasively, citing busyness and fatigue. She didn't want to get into long explanations, afraid she would burst out with all her accumulated resentment. She needed time to process what had happened, to understand what to do next. Kshusha, why are you acting like a stranger? Olga said over the phone, her voice trembling. We're your parents. Can't you understand and forgive us? Understand that we made a mistake? Mom, you used me for years, and now that I'm no longer convenient, you remember that I'm your daughter, Ksenia replied dryly. Victor also tried to talk to Ksenia, but his attempts were even more unsuccessful. He was a man of few words and found it difficult to express his feelings. He would just call and remain silent on the line, hoping Xenia would start talking. But Xenia also remained silent, and the call would end. They began to wonder how to regain her trust. Olga and Victor spent long evenings discussing what had happened. They recalled all the times they favored Alice, ignored Xenia's efforts, and took her care for granted. We were blind, Olga admitted, wiping away tears. We only saw what we wanted to see. We thought Kshusha would always be there, that she would never leave, but she's also a person with feelings. We should have thought about it earlier, Victor grumbled. Now we're paying the price. The burden of responsibility for our parents is heavy, he thought. After several unsuccessful attempts to help them pay bills and buy medicine, Xenia began to avoid their calls. It was hard for her. She wasn't used to this kind of life. She was used to receiving, not giving. "Why me?" she complained to her friend over the phone. "Why do I have to pay for them?" Her friend, however, was in no hurry to support her. She knew Alice had always been spoiled and selfish and didn't feel much sympathy for her. "It's your own fault," her friend said. "You always relied on Kajusha paying for everything, and now that she's stopped, you're suddenly offended. It's strange." Alice hung up, angry at her friend. She felt cornered. On the one hand, she didn't want to take on the responsibility. On the other, she knew that if she didn't, her parents would suffer. Xenia felt free, but the pain of betrayal still lingered. She continued attending pottery classes, finding solace and a way to express her emotions. Marina supported her in everything, seeing how Xenia was gradually coming back to life. "Don't hold a grudge against your parents," Marina said. "They're still your parents. They made a mistake, but they realize it. Give them a chance to make amends." Xenia remained silent, not knowing what to say. She understood that Marina was right, but she found it hard to forgive her parents. The resentment ran deep. Olga called her and informed her of their decision. "Kshusha, we've changed everything. Now it's all equal between you and Alice. We realize we were unfair to you." Xenia listened silently and then replied, "It's not about the inheritance, Mom. It's about the fact that you didn't appreciate me. You took my care for granted and worshipped Alice just for existing. I need time to process this." Despite the internal struggle, Xenia noticed herself slowly thawing. She saw her parents trying to correct their mistakes and how hard it was for them without her help. She felt her anger gradually giving way to compassion. One evening, while Xenia was doing pottery, Alice called her, sounding worried and scared. "Kshusha, Dad is not well," Alice said. "He needs urgent surgery and we don't have the money. Please help us." Xenia froze, clutching a lump of clay in her hands. She knew Victor had been suffering from heart disease for a long time, but she didn't think it was so serious. "What happened?" Xenia asked, trying to stay calm. Alice explained that Victor had an attack and the doctor— "Mom is in a panic," Alice continued. "I tried to find the money, but I couldn't. Please, Kshusha, help us." Xenia remained silent, thinking about what she had heard. She understood that her father's life depended on her decision. She could refuse to help, and Victor would die. But she also knew that if she helped, her parents might start using her again. "I'll think about it," Xenia said, and hung up. Inside her, two feelings battled. Resentment toward Xenia decided to help her father. She knew it would be difficult and that she would have to face her parents' ingratitude again, but she couldn't do otherwise. She called Alice and said she would help find the money for the operation. Alice was overjoyed and thanked her. Xenia began calling her friends and acquaintances, asking for help. Together, they raised the necessary amount, and Victor had the surgery. The operation was successful, and Victor began to recover. When Xenia visited her father, Olga approached her and hugged her. "Thank you, Kshusha," Olga said, crying. "You saved his life. We will never forget this." "I appreciate your words," Xenia said, "but I can't go back to the way things were. I don't want to be the family's wallet anymore. I want to do what I enjoy and live the way I want." Olga and Victor exchanged glances. They understood that Xenia had the right to her own life. They had made a mistake that they now had to atone for themselves. "We're not asking you to go back to the way things were, Kshusha," Olga said. "We just want you to know that we love you and that we're very sorry for how we treated you." Xenia nodded. That was all she wanted to hear: acknowledgement, apology, and understanding. At that moment, she realized that a real family is not about blood ties but mutual support and care, and that forgiveness is the key to healing and reconciliation.